My name is Lucas, I'm 28 years old, and for the last 4 years, I've been living in a small one-story house at the end of a quiet street in Dayton, Ohio, taking care of my grandfather, Walter, who is 84 and has needed round-the-clock care since the stroke he had in late 2019. When it first happened, my mom and her sisters had a family meeting in a Panera Bread, of all places, where they basically passed around the responsibility like it was some hot potato, all of them nodding and pretending they wanted to help but somehow coming up with excuses the moment actual work was involved. Aunt Sharon had her knee surgery, Aunt Beth had too much stress at work, and my mom claimed she couldn't drive Grandpa to appointments because she didn't want to risk missing her Zumba classes. That's when I offered to help, just for a few months, until we figured something out. Those few months turned into 4 years. I moved into Grandpa's spare bedroom with a suitcase and a folding desk for my laptop, thinking I'd work remotely and keep applying to marketing jobs until something clicked. But every day got more complicated. Grandpa needed help getting dressed, eating, using the bathroom. He'd forget whether he took his meds and then try to take them again. He once wandered outside in the middle of winter and knocked on the neighbor's door asking if they'd seen his wife, who'd passed away in 2011. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't easy. And it sure as hell wasn't how I imagined spending the back half of my 20s. But I stayed. Because he raised me. When my dad walked out when I was 5 and my mom spiraled into wine and retail therapy, it was Grandpa Walter who stepped in. He took me fishing, taught me how to check the oil in my car, showed up to my middle school band concerts when no one else bothered. He once drove 2 hours just to bring me my laptop charger because I forgot it during finals week. He was more of a father than my actual father, and I never forgot that. So when the stroke happened, and everyone else turned into a ghost, I knew I couldn't walk away. I didn't expect gratitude, but what I got instead, I never saw coming. At first, it was just the two of us. I set up pillboxes, made his meals, helped him into bed. I worked part-time at a local library doing some digital cataloging, barely making enough to cover gas and groceries. I had no life, really. My friends drifted away. I dated no one. I spent Friday nights cutting Grandpa's toenails and reminding him that the dog he kept asking about had died 10 years ago. He had good days, though. Sometimes he'd smile and tell me he was proud of me. Sometimes he'd cry and say he was sorry I had to give up so much. And I'd always say the same thing, that it was okay, that I owed him more than he'd ever know. He'd just squeeze my hand and say, "I'll make it right. You'll see, kid." I didn't know what he meant by that, but it stuck with me. Then came Jenna, my cousin, 31, always perfectly dressed, always carrying some overpriced handbag and acting like she was the queen of suburbia. She lived in Cincinnati, which was about 90 minutes away, but for 3 years, she didn't visit once. Not for Grandpa's birthday, not for the holidays, not even when he had to go to the ER after a fall. She sent flowers once, and a card that looked like it was printed from Google Images. But suddenly, around the time Grandpa's speech started slurring and he had more trouble remembering things, Jenna began showing up. The first time was under the guise of concern. She brought store-bought muffins and said things like, "It's so hard seeing him like this," while taking selfies next to his recliner. She stayed an hour, tops, then left. But after that, she started calling regularly, asking what kind of meds he was on, wondering aloud if he had a will, suggesting he needed a lawyer to get his affairs in order. I didn't think much of it at first, but then I noticed Grandpa getting anxious after her visits. One night he asked me, "Do I owe Jenna money?" I told him no, of course not. He looked down at his hands and muttered, "She said I did." I didn't know what to make of that. A few weeks later, I came home from the library and found a man in a suit sitting in the living room. Jenna introduced him as a financial advisor and said Grandpa had some questions about his estate. She never ran that by me. Grandpa looked confused the whole time, nodding vaguely, asking the same questions twice. After the guy left, Grandpa seemed shaken. He asked me where his checkbook was. When I asked why, he just said, "Jenna said we need to write something down. She said it's better if we do it now." I called my mom that night and told her I was getting worried, that Jenna might be manipulating him. My mom laughed and said, "Lucas, please, you're just feeling territorial. Let your cousin help." But I didn't trust it. Something was off. Jenna started showing up every weekend, bringing documents, whispering things to Grandpa when she thought I wasn't listening. He started hiding things. One day, I went to grab his laundry and found a manila envelope shoved under his mattress. Inside was a typed letter labeled Last Will and Testament. It had Jenna's name listed as sole beneficiary. My name wasn't on it, not even once. I froze. My hands were shaking. I wanted to believe it was a mistake, that he'd signed something he didn't understand, that Jenna had taken advantage of his confusion. I confronted her the next day and she acted surprised, even offended. Said Grandpa had every right to change his mind, that she was just helping him be responsible. I showed the document to him and asked if he understood what he signed. He looked at me blankly and said, "Didn't I leave everything to you?" That's when it hit me. He had no idea. Jenna had tricked him. Or worse, he was too far gone to know the difference. I didn't know what to do. I felt betrayed, helpless, angry. But I still had to feed him, bathe him, sit with him through the night when he got scared. And every time I did, I told myself I was doing it for the right reasons. I wasn't doing it for money. I was doing it for him. But that didn't mean it didn't hurt, especially not when the lawyers called. And the truth finally came out. The call came on a gray Thursday morning in late April. I was in the kitchen making Grandpa oatmeal when my phone buzzed. I almost didn't answer it because the number was unfamiliar, but something told me to pick up. It was a lawyer from a firm in Cincinnati, saying they represented the estate of Walter Mitchell, and they were calling to inform me that the will had been finalized 2 weeks ago. Finalized, not reviewed, not discussed, not something open for debate. Finalized. I asked why I wasn't contacted or involved. The man on the phone paused, then said gently, "The primary beneficiary is your cousin Jenna Anderson. She's listed as executor. All communications were directed through her." I felt something tighten in my chest. "What about me?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Is my name anywhere in the will?" Another pause. Then he said, "You were mentioned in the previous version, but not this one." I don't remember hanging up. I don't remember finishing the oatmeal. I just remember walking into Grandpa's room, seeing him asleep in his recliner, his mouth slightly open, the oxygen tube hooked around his ears, and thinking, he has no idea. None. Later that night, I brought it up carefully. I said, "Grandpa, do you remember talking to a lawyer recently?" He blinked slowly, then said, "Was that the man with the shiny shoes?" I nodded. "Do you remember what you talked about?" He looked confused, then shrugged. "I think Jenna said he needed me to sign something. Some bank thing, I don't know. I was tired that day." I sat down beside him. "You signed a new will, Grandpa. One that leaves everything to her. Are you sure that's what you wanted?" He looked stunned. "No," he said softly. "That can't be right." But when I showed him the copy I'd found under the mattress, his face changed. A flicker of fear, then shame, then nothing. He stared at the paper and whispered, "She said it was just to help you. That it would all go to you later. She said it was for taxes." My throat closed up. "Grandpa, she lied to you." He didn't respond. He just folded the paper back up with trembling hands and said, "I'm tired, kiddo. Can we talk tomorrow?" We didn't talk about it again. Not because I didn't want to, but because the next morning, he fell. I found him halfway between the bedroom and bathroom, face down, blood coming from his nose. The ambulance came fast. The doctor said he had a brain bleed. They kept him under observation for 2 days, but his body couldn't handle it. He died that Sunday, just after 4 a.m., while I was holding his hand. He didn't wake up. He didn't say goodbye. I just sat there in that stiff hospital chair, listening to the heart monitor go flat, trying not to cry because I didn't want the last thing he heard to be me breaking down. Jenna didn't even show up until the funeral. She cried loudly, hugged everyone like a movie star accepting an award, and wore a black dress I'm pretty sure cost more than my monthly rent. She gave a eulogy that made it sound like she'd spent every waking moment by Grandpa's side, describing their unbreakable bond and the late-night talks they supposedly had. I stood there in my too tight suit, my shoes scuffed, with 4 years of adult diapers, sleepless nights, sponge baths, and medical emergencies on my back, listening to this woman act like she was some kind of saint. I wanted to scream. Instead, I stayed quiet until the will was read. It happened the next week, in a sleek office with too much glass and a receptionist who wore pearls. Jenna sat at the end of the table, legs crossed, sipping a Starbucks like this was a brunch meeting. The lawyer, a tall man with a receding hairline, opened a folder and began. Grandpa's entire estate, his house, his savings, his car, his pension account, even the coin collection he'd shown me every Christmas growing up, was being left to Jenna. I got a sealed envelope and a check for $200, labeled, "In appreciation for services rendered." That was it, $200. For 4 years of my life. For every back-breaking, soul-draining day I spent making sure Grandpa didn't die alone. I didn't even open the envelope. I just stood up and walked out. Jenna called after me. "Lucas, wait, we should talk." I didn't turn around. I didn't say a word. I got in my car and drove until I hit the state line. I parked at a rest stop and cried harder than I'd ever cried in my life. Not because of the money, not because of the house, but because I realized in that moment that none of it had mattered. I had given everything for someone I loved, and in the end, I had been erased. Over the next few weeks, things got worse. Jenna moved into Grandpa's house. She painted over the green walls he loved, threw out his recliner, listed his vintage car on Facebook Marketplace, posted photos of her, new place, with captions like, fresh start, and, love this natural light. I blocked her on everything. I wanted no part of it. But then, a month later, I got a message from an old neighbor of Grandpa's named Mrs. Callahan. She said she found something in her attic, a metal lockbox with Grandpa's name on it, and my name written in black marker on the lid. She asked if I wanted it. I drove there that night. She handed it to me like it was a piece of treasure. Your grandpa brought this over last winter, she said. Said it was for you. Told me not to give it to anyone else. Said you'd know when the time was right. My hands were shaking as I took it. The lockbox was dented and dusty, but the latch popped open easily. Inside was a flash drive, an old leather notebook, and a letter with my name on it. I opened the letter first. It was dated 2 months before he died. It said, Lucas, if you're reading this, then something went wrong. I wanted to do right by you. I tried. But Jenna had lawyers, and I didn't know who to trust. This is my insurance. You took care of me when no one else would. You deserve to know the truth. Look at the flash drive, and use what you find. I love you, kiddo. Always. Grandpa. I stared at the paper for a long time, then took the flash drive out and plugged it into my laptop. What I saw made my blood run cold, and I knew then, this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The flash drive contained 6 video files, each labeled by date, starting 6 months before Grandpa died. I clicked the oldest one. The screen flickered, then Grandpa's face appeared, sitting in his recliner, wearing that plaid sweater he always said made him look distinguished. He looked tired, his eyes a little foggy, but his voice was firm. This is Walter Mitchell, he said, staring straight into the camera. It's October 18th, 2022. I'm making this video because I've been feeling pressure lately from my granddaughter Jenna. She keeps bringing over papers, keeps telling me I need to sign things for Lucas. But the more I read, the less it makes sense. He took a deep breath, then leaned forward. Lucas is the one who's been taking care of me, day in, day out. That boy gave up everything to make sure I didn't rot in a nursing home. Jenna never came, not until she heard I was sick again. Then she showed up with lawyers. I don't trust it. I'm going to make more of these, just in case something happens. My heart was pounding as I watched. I opened the next video. In it, Grandpa was visibly agitated. It's November now, he said. She came again today. Told me I needed to update my will because of new tax laws. I asked her if Lucas knew about it. She said yes. I don't think that's true. She got upset when I said I wanted to talk to my own lawyer. Said it was too complicated. I pretended to agree, but I didn't sign anything. The next few videos were variations of the same thing. Jenna pushing, Grandpa resisting. In one, he even said, she told me I was forgetting things that I already signed. But I remember. I didn't, not yet. But then came the last video, dated January 15th. The last week Grandpa was alive. He looked pale, weak, slurring slightly. Lucas, he whispered. I don't know if I did the right thing. She brought another man, said he was a notary, told me it was for your protection. I signed. I was confused. I thought she was helping you. But afterward, she told me it was done. That everything was hers now. I don't understand. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. He coughed violently, then looked into the camera with tears in his eyes. If you see this, it means I'm gone. And I need you to fix it. Don't let her take everything. It's not hers. It was never hers. The video ended there. I just sat in silence, my hands clenched around the laptop. I wanted to scream. I wanted to find Jenna and shake her until she admitted what she'd done. But more than that, I wanted justice. I opened the leather notebook next. It was filled with Grandpa's handwriting, dates, notes, sketches of the house, and records of conversations with Jenna. He'd been documenting everything. There were entries like, Jenna came today, asked again about the will, refused to let Lucas be there. And, she brought a man named Gary, said he was a lawyer, wouldn't give me a business card. He even listed check numbers, strange bank withdrawals, and receipts I'd never seen before. I felt like I was holding a roadmap to the truth. I spent the next 3 days compiling everything. I organized the videos, scanned the notebook, and contacted a lawyer. This time, one I chose. Her name was Meredith Tran, 41, sharp as a knife and not afraid to say what she thought. I showed her everything. She watched the videos without blinking, then looked at me and said, she's screwed. This is elder coercion, potentially fraud, maybe even forgery depending on what was signed. I asked her if I had a case. She nodded. A strong one. But we'll have to be careful. People like Jenna don't go down without a fight. We filed a petition to contest the will. Jenna was served 2 days later. She didn't call, didn't message, but I knew she saw it. Because the next time I drove past Grandpa's old house, her new car was gone. A week later, I got an email from a lawyer representing her. It was a long, formal letter claiming everything had been handled legally and ethically, and warning me about the emotional and financial costs of pursuing litigation. I forwarded it to Meredith. Her reply was simple: let's bury them. We subpoenaed the original will, the medical records, and the so-called notary. It turns out the notary Jenna used wasn't registered. The signature didn't match the official sample. The man listed as the witness had died 6 months prior. That was the first crack. Then we pulled Grandpa's medical records. The day he supposedly signed the final will, he was on heavy medication. His cognitive assessments showed clear signs of confusion and memory gaps. We got statements from 2 nurses who worked with him that week. One of them remembered Jenna showing up with some guy in a suit and said Grandpa seemed distressed afterward. The other said he asked where Lucas was, and when she told him I was at work, he said, "I wish he was here. I don't like this." Jenna didn't know any of this was happening. She thought I'd backed off, that I was licking my wounds somewhere. So when she walked into court for the hearing 3 weeks later, wearing her designer heels and smug expression, I don't think she expected to see me standing there with a lawyer and a thick binder full of evidence. She definitely didn't expect the videos. When Meredith played the first clip of Grandpa saying, "Lucas is the one who's been taking care of me," Jenna went stiff. When we played the final video, where he said he'd been tricked, she looked like she'd seen a ghost. Her lawyer tried to object, said it was hearsay. Meredith pointed out it was a first-hand video statement made voluntarily by the testator. The judge allowed it. Then came the bombshell. The court-ordered handwriting expert testified that Grandpa's signature on the final will look suspiciously inconsistent. That combined with the fake notary and missing witnesses? The judge didn't even need a recess. He ruled the new will invalid. The previous version, the one that left everything to me, was reinstated. Jenna stormed out of the courtroom before the judge finished talking. She didn't look at me, didn't say a word, but I saw the fury on her face, like something had been stolen from her, as if she was the victim, as if she hadn't spent months trying to erase me. I didn't feel satisfied, not yet, not until I opened Grandpa's bedroom door again, stood in the center of the room he spent his final years in, and whispered, "I did it, Grandpa. I fixed it." I thought that would be the end, but a week later, I found out Jenna had one more card to play. And this time, it wasn't just about the house. It was about me. It started with a knock on the door, not the usual kind, either. It was sharp, fast, and filled with the kind of rhythm that only people with something official to say use. I opened it to find a man and woman in business attire, holding clipboards and badges. "Lucas Mitchell?" the woman asked. I nodded slowly. "We're with Adult Protective Services. We received an anonymous report that you may have financially exploited your grandfather during his final months." I blinked. "What?" She glanced down at her clipboard. "The report claims that you manipulated your grandfather into changing his will, withheld his medication, and restricted access from family members." I felt like the floor dropped out from beneath me. That's not true. Not even close. But they weren't there to debate. They asked to come in. I didn't have anything to hide, so I let them. They walked through the house, asked to see Grandpa's old bedroom, asked about medication logs, about expenses. I showed them everything. I even offered them the flash drive and notebook. The man glanced at it but said, "We'll need to file that through official channels." I sat at the kitchen table afterward, watching them leave, my stomach in knots. I already knew who was behind it. Jenna. She was trying to flip the narrative. If she couldn't keep the inheritance, she'd try to destroy my reputation instead. I called Meredith immediately. She sighed when I told her. "It's classic retaliation," she said, "petty and cruel. But if APS opens a full investigation, it could affect your record, especially if you ever want to apply for guardianship or certain jobs." "What can we do?" I asked. "Fight back," she said. "We file a countersuit for defamation. And while we're at it, we freeze the transfer of any remaining assets until this is resolved." She wants a war? Let's give her one. Over the next few weeks, Jenna's attacks escalated. She posted online, hinting that I'd taken advantage of a sick old man, without using my name but making it clear who she meant. She messaged extended family, playing the victim, saying I'd turned Grandpa against everyone. Some people believed her. Aunt Sharon blocked me. My mom told me to just let it go, as if I hadn't spent 4 years wiping her father's mouth and changing his bedsheets. I started to feel like I was losing. Even though the will had been overturned, even though I had the videos and the court ruling, Jenna was winning the emotional war. People love a sob story, and Jenna knew how to cry on cue. One night, I sat on the porch and seriously considered just giving up, selling the house, moving states, leaving everything behind. But then I opened Grandpa's notebook again. There was one entry I'd missed before, dated 3 weeks before he died. It said, "If Jenna's reading this, shame on you. But if Lucas is reading this, don't give up, kid. You know what's right. Do what I couldn't." That was all I needed. I got up, went inside, and started writing a letter. Not to the court, not to the APS, but to every member of my family. A full account of what had happened. I included scans of Grandpa's notes, still frames from the videos, the time-stamped court ruling, and a closing paragraph that simply said, "I loved him. You didn't. Make peace with that." I mailed them all the next morning. Then I got back to work. Meredith filed the defamation suit. APS eventually cleared me of all allegations, stating there was no evidence of financial or emotional abuse, and closing the case permanently. But the damage had been done. The trust, the quiet dignity of my grief, the chance to remember Grandpa without bitterness, it was all tainted. Then something strange happened. 2 weeks after the investigation ended, I got a call from a local reporter. He said he'd heard about an inheritance dispute involving forged wills and secret videos. I asked how he found out. He said Jenna had contacted him. She was trying to spin the story in her favor, claiming she was cut out of the will unjustly by a manipulative cousin who poisoned her relationship with her dying grandfather. I could have ignored it, but instead, I met with him. I showed him everything. The court ruling, the documents, the videos. I made him promise not to use Grandpa's name or photo, but he could write the rest. The story ran under the headline, "Grandson Wins Legal Battle After Exposing Last-Minute Will Fraud by Relative." It went semi-viral, and this time, the court of public opinion flipped. I got dozens of messages, strangers thanking me for standing up for caregivers, others sharing similar stories about family betrayal. Even some of our relatives, people who hadn't spoken to me in months, started reaching out to apologize. But Jenna didn't back down. She doubled down. She filed an appeal, claimed the judge was biased, that the videos were staged, that Grandpa had been coached. Her lawyer was aggressive, loud, and clearly expensive. Meredith warned me, "She's going to drag this out. She wants to exhaust you." But then, the unexpected happened. A man showed up at Meredith's office claiming to have information. He was a former paralegal at the firm Jenna had used to draft the fraudulent will. He said he quit after overhearing a conversation between Jenna and the lawyer where they joked about how easy it was to get an old man to sign something when you offer him cookies and say it's for his grandson. He had receipts, emails, internal memos. He even had a photo of Jenna sitting in the office with the unsigned will in her hand, taken the day after the date listed on the document, which meant the official date on the fake will was falsified. Meredith's hands trembled when she looked at it. "This is it," she said. "This is the end. We brought it to court." The judge was furious. He not only dismissed the appeal but referred the case to the district attorney for criminal investigation. Jenna was hit with charges of fraud, conspiracy, and elder coercion. Her lawyer tried to distance himself, claiming he was manipulated by his client, but he was clearly in deep. It made the local news again. This time, Jenna was the headline. Her mugshot, her fake tears, her downfall. And me? I finally got to breathe. The legal battle was over. Grandpa's will was honored. Jenna was facing consequences. But it didn't feel like a win. Not exactly. Because at the end of the day, I still lost the person who mattered most. I stood in Grandpa's backyard that night, the garden lights twinkling, the air thick with summer heat, and I said out loud, "We got her, Grandpa. You can rest now." I thought that would be the final chapter. But then I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single photograph. One I'd never seen before. It was me, age 12, sitting on Grandpa's lap, both of us laughing, a fishing pole in my hand. On the back was a note, in Jenna's handwriting. It said, "You think you won. But some debts don't die. See you soon." My stomach dropped. Because whatever peace I thought I had found, it was about to be tested one last time. For 2 days after that letter arrived, I didn't sleep. Not really. I kept checking the windows, double locking the doors, making sure the cameras I'd installed around the house were still recording. The photo itself didn't scare me, it was the message. See you soon. That was a threat. And even if Jenna was out on bail, under investigation, and facing multiple charges, it meant nothing to someone with no shame left to lose. I reported the letter, of course. Brought it to Meredith, who in turn brought it to the DA. They logged it, added it to the growing list of evidence against Jenna, and told me not to engage if she tried anything else. But it didn't help my nerves. I started sleeping with my phone on full volume, a baseball bat next to my bed, and the porch light on all night. My friends told me to get away for a while, take a trip, leave the house behind. But I couldn't. Not just because I didn't want Jenna thinking she'd chased me off, but because I owed it to Grandpa to be there. To keep his house alive. Not as a shrine, but as a home. The one he wanted me to have. 1 week passed. Then 2. No sign of Jenna. No more letters. just silence. And just when I was starting to breathe again, something strange happened. A man showed up on my porch around 7 in the morning. Middle-aged, glasses, wearing a suit too cheap for how confident he looked. He handed me a thick envelope and said, "I represent the Anderson family." I didn't say anything. He smiled. "My client is willing to drop all remaining civil claims, withdraw her appeal, and permanently forfeit her interest in the estate." I waited for the "but," and he didn't disappoint. "In exchange, she requests a private meeting with you. No lawyers, no press, just a conversation." I laughed. "Is this a joke?" "She says she owes you an explanation." I told him to get off my property. I watched him walk to his car and drive off like he hadn't just delivered the creepiest offer of the year. But that night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. What would she even say? That she was sorry? That she thought Grandpa owed her something for existing? That she hated me so much she was willing to forge legal documents and burn down the family to get a house she never even lived in? But curiosity is a slow poison. It seeps in when you're tired. And after everything, I wanted to hear her say it. I needed to. So I agreed. We met in a public park 3 days later, with cameras watching from every light pole and people nearby. She wore sunglasses, a scarf, and that same smug smirk she always had in court. "Lucas," she said, like we were old friends. I didn't respond. She sat on the bench beside me. "I'm not going to apologize," she said. "You wouldn't believe me anyway." "Then why am I here?" I asked. She pulled something out of her purse. It was a letter. Folded, creased, yellowed around the edges. She handed it to me. "He wrote this to me a month before he died. It's not in your files." It wasn't in the notebook. He gave it to me directly. I took it, cautious. It was his handwriting. The envelope said, "To Jenna, for when I'm gone." I opened it. The letter was short, just 4 sentences. "Jenna, I hope you find peace one day. I know I wasn't the grandfather you needed me to be. I know I favored Lucas because he was there, but that doesn't mean I didn't love you. I hope you forgive me." I stared at it for a long time. Then I looked at her. "This doesn't excuse what you did." "I know," she said quietly, "but it might explain it." For a moment, the mask slipped. Her voice cracked. "You think I showed up for the inheritance. But the truth is, I came back because I couldn't live with the guilt. I was the one who refused to visit. I stayed away. And when I realized he might die without ever seeing me again, I panicked. I wanted him to say I mattered. I thought if I took control, if I inserted myself into the story, it would fix something. I was wrong. I folded the letter and handed it back. "You made a mess. You lied, manipulated, and tried to erase me." She nodded. "And I'll pay for that, legally, socially, probably forever. But I needed you to know it wasn't just greed. It was desperation." We sat in silence. She stood first. "You don't have to forgive me. I wouldn't if I were you. But I'm done fighting. It's yours now. All of it. Just take care of the garden." He loved that garden. Then she walked away. I didn't follow. I didn't feel sorry for her, but I understood. A little. Grief makes people strange. Regret makes them dangerous. And sometimes, when those two things combine, they do irreversible damage. The next month was quiet. Jenna withdrew her appeal. She pled guilty to a reduced charge, got probation, community service, and a fine she'll be paying off for the next 10 years. Her name disappeared from family invites. Her social media vanished. And the house? I renovated it, repainted the kitchen, rebuilt the porch swing Grandpa always used to sit on. Started volunteering with caregiver support groups, sharing my story, helping others who felt invisible. One afternoon, I found the old fishing pole he gave me when I was 10. I took it to the lake we used to visit, sat there, watching the water ripple, the line drifting with the breeze. And I finally cried, not out of anger, but release, closure, love, because no matter how messy it got, how ugly the fight was, or how twisted Jenna tried to make things, none of it could erase the truth. I was there, I showed up, I stayed, and in the end, Grandpa knew that. That's what mattered. That's what will always matter.